Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing great, and I don't know how many of you are actually following the Pro Chess League, but those of you who do probably already know this. Those of you who don't, a member of the Pittsburgh Pawn Grabbers, America's newest Grandmaster Awonder Liang, has defeated Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura in the Pro Chess League. So this is one of the games I decided to show you. It's his game against Caruana with the white pieces. And although it's a pretty standard Ruy Lopez, Awonder really shows that there's still a lot of poison to the Ruy Lopez, and even a player of Caruana's caliber can't really afford to be reckless. So let's see this game. Liang opens with e4. We have e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5. So the Ruy Lopez. a6, the Morphy's defense. a4, knight to f6. We have castles, bishop to e7, and rook to e1. So all standard theory. b5, bishop to b3, d6 now, c3. We have castles, h3, knight to a5, bishop to c2. All still a standard line of the Morphy's defense. c5, d4, knight to d7, and here we have the blocking d5. Caruana goes for knight to b6 and knight b to d2. Bishop to d7, b3 now, c4, knight to f1 and knight to b7. Bishop to e3, c captures on b3, a captures on b3, and a5. So Liang has the open a file, and the Caruana has the a pawn and the b pawn, so he will definitely try at some point to push a4 to create a passed pawn on the queen side. Bishop to d3 by Liang, preparing queen to e2 to gain a double attack on the b5 pawn. So a4 by Caruana, and now b4, not allowing this exchange. Rook to c8 and queen to e2 now. Offering up the c3 pawn, but in exchange Liang will grab the b5 pawn, and then the a4 pawn will become a weakness. So Caruana doesn't want to do this. He plays knight to c4. This blocks the queen's and bishop's attack to the b5 pawn, and also Caruana wants to grab the bishop on e3, denying Liang the bishop pair. And here Liang goes for bishop to c1. He wants to preserve his bishop pair, and later will he play knight to d2 and exchange this knight on c4, and then once again go after the b5 pawn. Another idea, instead of bishop to c1, would be to play knight 3 to d2. Immediately go after this knight on c4 and actually allow knight captures on e3. Knight captures, and now after rook captures on c3, bishop captures, and after bishop to g5, now capture on d7, queen captures, and then play queen to a6. Now this pawn on a4 is still a pretty big weakness, and here Liang would also win a pawn, so this would be another way to go about this. But after c4, he doesn't want to give up the bishop pair. Bishop c1, queen to e8. Now the queen and bishop are both defending the b5 pawn, and now knight 3 to d2, offering an exchange. Knight back to b6. Now we have knight to b1, defending the c3 pawn, and here Fabiano plays f5. We have e captures on f5 and bishop captures on f5, giving up the pawn on b5. So pawn captures, and now queen to g6. And queen to g6, actually there's a double attack on the knight on b1, so this is the idea of queen to g6. And also now Fabiano will capture the pawn on d5 with his knight, as you can't prevent both threats. So bishop to e3, now both rooks are defending the knight on b1, and now Fabiano simply captures back the pawn. Knight captures on d5. We have knight to g3 attacking the bishop, and bishop captures on b1. And here Liang plays bishop to c4, pinning this knight. He doesn't want to capture this piece, he wants to capture this piece. Now he pins it, and this is where Fabiano goes wrong. The best way for him to treat this position is actually to grab this bishop on c4 with rook captures, and after queen captures, play queen to d3, offering an exchange of queens. Now the queen has nowhere to go, the pawn is preventing her from going to b3, bishop is covering a2, so you either have to move the queen to, let's say, c6, or if you exchange, then after bishop captures, it's a pretty good position for black, having two pieces for the rook. So definitely what Fabiano should have gone for after this bishop to c4 move. But instead of capturing, here Fabiano plays bishop to e4, getting his own piece out of the way, and he is up a piece now, but you can't keep this piece. As we have queen to a2. Now Liang has a double attack on the d5 knight, and there is no way to protect it. The queen can protect it with queen to f7 or queen to e6, but then the bishop on e4 is unprotected as the knight will capture it. So Fabiano here plays king to h8. Now we have bishop captures, and queen captures with an attack on the b7 knight. Knight to d8, and now comes rook captures on a4. Here Liang grabs a pawn, he's up a pawn, and is ready to push his b pawn up the board. Knight to e6, we have b5. He doesn't really care about his c pawn, he wants to start pushing his pawn. So rook captures on c3, we have b6, rook to d3 attacking the queen, and queen to b5 now. Kind of attacking the rook. Okay, the queen does defend it, but the queen is nicely placed behind the passed pawn. So queen to e8, offering a trade of queens, and this favors Liang. So queen captures, rook captures, and rook to b1, now placing a rook behind the passed pawn. Knight to c5, attacking the rook, rook to a7, preparing the pawn to be pushed to b7. We have d5. Caruana also has two passed pawns in the center. Okay, the d pawn is passed, but this b pawn is much more powerful. b7. Now the threat, of course, is rook to a8, just simply trading the rook and promoting to a queen, and knight captures on b7. You have to give up a piece here. Rook captures, and now bishop to f8, protecting the g7 pawn. Knight to f5 now. We have d4, bishop to g5, and now e4. Fabiano will now try to create a passed pawn of his own. Knight captures on g7, and now rook to d1 check. King to h2, and now bishop to d6 check. G3 blocking, and now rook to f8 with the threat of rook captures on f2. Rook to f7 stopping this, rook captures, and now comes king to g8 attacking the rook on f7. Rook to d7 attacking the bishop, and here we have e3. Here Fabiano offers a full piece here with the idea that if rook captures, e captures on f2, threatening f1 promotion, but then simply rook to f6. Queen is promoted on f1, rook captures, and here each player has two pawns, and Fabiano has a rook against the bishop and the knight. White is better here, but this would give him drawing chances. So after e3, Liang isn't interested in grabbing a piece. Instead, he plays knight to h5, and it seems like Fabiano caught a break here. It seems like pawn to e2, and the pawn is unstoppable, coming to e1. Problem is, if you push e2, you're getting checkmated because of knight to f6 check. Doesn't matter what you play. If you play king to f8, you get bishop to h6 checkmate, and if you go bishop to king to h8, you get rook captures on h7. Again, this is checkmate. So after this knight to h5, unfortunately you can't push e2. Fabiano played bishop to e5, getting his bishop out of the way, and preventing the knight from going to f6 with check. So f captures on e3 now. Again, you can't capture because your rook is hanging on d1. So d3, pushing that passed pawn, knight to f6 check, bishop captures, and now rook to f1, attacking the bishop. Bishop g5, we have rook to f2 check, and after king to g1, the rook is attacked. There's really nothing for Fabiano to do here anymore, so in this position, Fabiano Caruana resigned the game. And a very nice victory for the youngest American Grandmaster and the newest, I believe, Awonder Liang here. So that's the game. I think this is the first game I've shown from the Pro Chess League, and I believe the third game I've shown by Awonder Liang on my channel. So I do hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if I will be showing that game between Nakamura, but I might. And I believe today is Nakamura versus Carlsen, the official random match, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be enjoying that, and maybe I'll show a game from that match as well, if there will be some interesting games, as official random is always interesting. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mario Encinosa, Anand Rao, Christian Stork, and Michael Keane for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. and I'm still taking suggestions what to do for a giveaway when my channel reaches 100,000 subscribers. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon.